Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. When you're on the receiving end of poor customer service, it's almost always the result of poor leadership. Customer service specialist Monique Richardson says a good leader cares about their staff and takes the time and effort to be with them on the front line, listen to their concerns and make improvements. There's a term for it. It's called servant leadership. Monique explains to Chris Ashmore.
Servant leadership, Chris, has actually been around for many, many years, and it was first coined, the term servant leadership, by Robert Greenleaf in his 1970s essay, The Servant as Leader. And really at the heart of servant leadership is that the role of the leader, the primary responsibility, is to be able to provide service to others. And so rather than some leaders that might be motivated by positions of power and that hierarchy and command and control, at the heart of all servant leadership is really about that deep care for people and also making sure that they have positive experiences at work.
What would you say are the characteristics of a servant leader?
Characteristics of servant leaders have been really demonstrated by some really important people in history, and that can include, Mother Teresa and Gandhi, looking at Dr. Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and those characteristics are very much around, first of all, humility. And great servant leaders recognise that they have so much to be able to learn from others. They also have a very, very strong ability to be able to empathise and to be able to listen to their people. And also they recognise that when they're looking at all of their role around being a leader, it's very much around looking at what they can do to be able to provide an environment where people feel deeply cared about at every level.
Is it important that a customer service leader spends time with their customers?
I think it's a great one. When we've got leaders that can be on the front line with the team, talking with customers, it's not only the opportunity to be able to engage with customers themselves, but also to then be able to demonstrate to their people that they are also present. And I think, a couple of favourite examples of mine was Gail Kelly from Westpac, and used to schedule that in her calendar every single month. David Thodey from Telstra was famous for calling customers for complaints and actually speaking directly to customers. And so I think it also demonstrates to people that leaders are also willing and listening to customers, but also that they're alongside them, on the front line.
Absolutely. When it comes to standards within the customer service team, how do you create those standards so that they perform at their best?
This is one of my favourite things that I do, Chris, is creating standards with the team, because if the team doesn't have a really clear idea about what those standards are, it makes it really difficult to know what type of service am I expected to deliver. So one of the ways that I do this is through getting the leaders and the team engaged and involved in the creation of the standards, but then also the behaviours. So we might have a standard, but what are the behaviours associated with that? And when the team are involved in their creation and they also can have input, it also means that they own them. And so then the standards can then be used for coaching, for feedback, and importantly recognition, but it's a really clearly defined expectation about how we do service here. And that's unique to every organisation and to every team.
People listening to this are consumers of products and services, and, we've often been on the receiving end of poor customer service. But why does it happen? Is that because of the leadership, or is it individuals who are serving the customer?
There, I think, are many reasons why poor customer service is delivered, but I have always maintained, and I will continue to maintain, that all great customer experiences start and end with leadership, and they will have the single biggest impact on that customer experience. But when poor service is delivered, and I've always said, people don't turn up to work to deliver bad customer service. I mean, you can imagine somebody getting out of bed in the morning and doing a big stretch and saying, you know what, I'm going to go and deliver really bad customer service today. Just doesn't happen. But there's so many things that can get in the way. Poor processes is definitely one. We see technology failures at times. It can also be, even at the moment, where there's been so many stock and shortages of supplies, as well as unclear standards and expectations, but also poor leaders. And so if leaders are not taking care of their people, it makes it very, very difficult for people to take care of their customers. And that's where that leadership role is just so integral.
A good leader shouldn't be there hovering over the shoulder of their staff. They should be able to trust them and allow them to get on with the job of serving the customer, shouldn't they? In other words, empower them.
Empowerment's one of my absolute favourite topics, Chris, when we look at service leadership. So there's 3 ways that leaders empower their people. And the first one is through knowledge. So for a team member to feel empowered, they need to make sure that they have got knowledge, that they've had training, that they've got knowledge of processes, product knowledge. Because if I've got knowledge, I'm going to feel empowered to be able to help the customer. The second one is also through decision making. So, the team member needs to know that they can make decisions in the best interest of the customer and be trusted to be able to make those decisions before they have to go through, 14 levels of leadership to be able to get sign off or approval to help the customer. And the final one's around discretionary spend. So when things do go wrong or surprising and delighting the customer, they have to know also too that they are able to be able to access funds. They've got a discretionary spending amount to help the customer. And my favourite example of all is the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, and they are all empowered up to $2,000 to be able to fix an issue or to be able to help a customer. So they don't always necessarily use that amount because they feel trusted and they're still protecting the company asset, but they know that they can make those decisions, which is better for the customer, a lot better for the team member, but also gives leaders more time as well. So I always look at those 3 levels of empowerment.
At the end of the day, how do you know when you have a successful service culture?
I would think when you have a successful service culture, you see it in results. And that can be in the team, it can be team morale. We can also see retention. We also look at engagement scores. So that comes into it, but also through customer satisfaction. So that can be customer satisfaction scores. It can be the NPS or the N promoter, increased sales, increased retention. So that way we can see tangibly, which I think is so important to be able to look at service, to be able to say we can actually quantify when we've got leaders focusing on service and our teams focusing on service, that there is actually bottom line impact and results, and many statistics that will support that service leadership and servant leadership as well, that will actually mean that the organisation is more profitable and more successful.
And how often do you need to do that? I suppose it's all the time. You just got to keep looking at the statistics and all those variables. Is that right?
Yeah, and just to be able to make sure that there is ways that we can regularly measure team member satisfaction and engagement, as well as that with customer satisfaction and engagement, but also to not always waiting for those formal opportunities, looking at the scheduled engagement or customer surveys, but also doing check-ins with the team. I love the concept of stay interviews where we're checking in with the team, just making sure that they're happy before they leave, and then we find that out. Anecdotal feedback that's given from customers about how to improve that experience. How as leaders are we making sure our people can capture that just in the moment, so that we can also, we're not waiting for that 6-month or annual survey to come out. We've got our, fingers on the pulse all the time.
That was customer service specialist Monique Richardson. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Producers are Nick Schildberger, Chris Ashmore, Jeff Waters and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more Be Daily next week. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.